So I'm here in Los Angeles at a Kobe Bryant themed Airbnb, and it was important for me to talk about how to overcome Quitter's Day and build habits that last. So if you're familiar with Kobe Bryant and ultimately the habits that he formed and the accomplishments that he had, you certainly know the amount of time and effort he put in, as well as his mindset, if you know about Mamba mindset, that he used to ultimately achieve what he did, as well as the person that he became. So I'm going to go through a couple things of how to have a similar type of mindset as well as outcome. So if you don't know Quitter's Day, it's basically the second Friday of January that statistically most people quit their New Year's resolutions. Typically, they're setting goals that are way too vague or they're way too ambitious. So that would be the first thing, is to stop doing that. And a lack of a structured plan, it's no surprise that motivation fades and you ultimately challenge how the outcome is really going to be. So the three steps that are going to be in terms of creating habits that have lasting change are going to be: step one, start small. We first want to understand what those habits are that ultimately by building them would help us build this proverbial brick wall. If we don't understand what those inputs are, we then won't have that output that we seek or desire. Example, we desire to go to the gym. Therefore, we would plan and practice setting up our gym clothes, as well as preparing the night before what the day is going to look like. Maybe that's getting the water or the snacks or whatever logistics you might have. That way, as you wake up, you're able to take action simply on the things that you were planning on doing, and there's not a need for motivation or having any sort of logistics come into be an issue of you going to the gym. In addition to us going to the gym, we should also go to the gym for a small amount of time, maybe just doing like one exercise. This seems crazy in thought, but ultimately James Clear specifically talks about this in the book Atomic Habits on the idea of a 2-minute habit. That would simply be that we should execute on things that maybe take 2 minutes. So the example of having the gym clothes, preparing the night before, then going to the gym for 2 minutes, simply because we're building the habit of going to the gym. The habit of going to the gym for 60 minutes 5 times a week is traditionally what we would put into the habits that we would create. We need to start small, and then we can understand and learn what actually benefits us. Maybe it's 3 times a week instead of five, and also the amount of time that it's taking us, as well as what actually benefits us as we continue to do these things. Oftentimes, we assume the utopian mindset of what we actually need to do, or maybe what someone else has done, but they potentially have been going to the gym, if you will, 5 times a week for the past decade. And that's maybe their, stress reliever, right? And their way that they unwind. You might unwind with books or something different, right? And so understanding not just the actions that you're taking, the habits that you're forming, but ultimately how that actually translates and benefits you, and how it truly benefits you, not just how you slide yourself to think that, oh man, I don't need to go 5 times a week because it's hard, even though you maybe should go 5 times a week. So understanding that balance of what's actually beneficial for you and not just what your mindset might be preventing or creating excuses for you to do. Step two is going to be understanding your, okay. Step two is all about understanding the science of your habits. So again, in books like James Clear, we learn about how there's a cue, a routine, and a reward. And so we want to understand what the habit is to then create the process that's ultimately going to help us. It's the idea that we fall to the level of our systems and not to a level of our motivation or thoughts or ideas how something's going to work out. And so having specific cues, routines, and rewards. So routines being the systems, rewards being the outcome after we achieved what we have desired, and the cue of the inputs that are then going to have. We want to go into the next phase, which is going to be tracking our progress. So I've tracked my progress in a number of different ways. Sometimes that might be just like on a paper journal, just kind of hitting, tally marks. I mainly use an app called Habit Share, which I can also share with my friends. And that not only keeps me accountable to them, but also to myself. And I can look to see when I hit, when I miss, or maybe when I didn't do it. There's a couple options that I could track, as well as, applications that allow me to really understand the benefit of doing what I'm doing and seeing that visual progress along the way, instead of just simply thinking I've done it or overstating what I've actually done. It's really easy to say straightforward what it is. That also the ability to build discipline and build a system and build a habit of tracking how I'm doing something ultimately then means that I'm able to create and form and execute on discipline and other things. It's the same thing of like, if I'm disciplined with saving and managing my money, I would also potentially, most likely, be disciplined with how I do meal prep or how I do other things in life. It's the idea of how I do something ultimately is how I do everything. And part of that really becomes an identity shift. So that's the next section that we want to talk about. And it's the idea of doing an identity shift with something, for example, like a Masogi challenge or potentially a daily type challenge over a set amount of time. Now, a Masogi challenge essentially is a annual type of pilgrimage of something that you dedicate the year to do. And you do it as something that's important to you in that year. So oftentimes people think of physical fitness, but it might be a spiritual, potentially a financial, maybe an emotional, or simply a business growth type of action that you would really focus on. For me, in this year, it's doing 100 YouTube videos in 100 days, simply because it, one, gets me out of my comfort zone in a lot of ways as it relates to video, which is this. In addition to audio, understanding how I communicate, how I pause, tone inflections, and really everything that comes with that. In addition to, it's working with a team of people instead of just myself, as well as sharing content and things ultimately I'm just really excited about sharing, and things that I believe that other people should hear as I continue to fine tune my message and ultimately what I truly want to continue talking about, which really is stemming along the idea of investing in alternative investments, finance, and living an ideal life so that you're not only growing your wealth, preserving it, and stewarding it, but living your life along the way. Below is a link to download a Masogi ebook that I outline how to create a Masogi challenge for you for this year and beyond. There's not a set time of when you can start or stop. There's not a set number of days. It's really just the idea of it. Other people have done, say, climbing a 14er or other aspects. And so really it's a matter of you and what you need and what you feel challenged with. And it's something that you potentially might fail at, which is also an opportunity for growth, which is why I advocate for it. There's also similar challenges, as I've talked in other videos about 75 hard, Project 50, even doing, say, like a 30-day, say, cold plunge challenge, or running a mile a day, a number of different things that you could do. But take a look at that ebook. Take a look at that ebook so that way you can understand what is the big thing that you want to focus on this year. By focusing on that, ultimately your identity is going to change, because it has to. In order to do some of these challenging things that you would be for the entire year, your identity would need to change to be able to allow you to do those things. And the habits that you would form to be able to create that possibility of it happening would then be caused. And so it's not just a, hey, I'm going to go to a gym, but it's, hey, I'm going to go to the gym to train for maybe a Spartan race, right? It's a very different level of motivation, as well as habits and systems that you would perform, which ultimately is how I have found the best benefit of doing a bigger, larger goal than necessarily just a habitual change, but it's a habitual change for a set outcome that is beyond what the actual habit is. Now, as we go through a number of these different challenges that you might execute on, the big thing to understand is that it's not all or nothing in the sense of how you should go about it. Oftentimes, as we go through different challenges, ultimately we'll hit different levels of walls and issues that we'll need to overcome. And that's really part of growth. And so in order to go through this growth, we therefore need to recognize that it's the idea of it's easier to be 100% committed than it is to be 98%. That's going to be a challenge, and that's going to push you further than ultimately where you have been before. And that's because you're going somewhere you haven't been before. Now, as you have those challenges and obstacles and things that you overcome, if you do miss them, it's recognizing that you are in the path of growth. And ultimately, in order to grow, you not always are going to achieve what you have. It's the example of failing. Failing ultimately is inevitable, but how you treat that failure and how you grow past it is ultimately what makes you you and the person that you intend to become. I would recommend fully, especially as you do these challenges in whatever aspect, whether it's daily or situational, have it be a game. Make it a game to say, hey, for 30 days, I'm going to do this, right? And be, again, in that mindset and that understanding and that identity to ultimately execute. Be kind to yourself through the process, have encouragement, have little rewards along the way. One of my favorite rewards is actually eating creme brulee at a restaurant at the bar with just a glass of water, right? It's something that's simple, it's important to me, and ultimately gives me an opportunity to celebrate along the way, as well as to celebrate when something has accomplished. Now, I'm not having creme brulee every single time some, minute little task is done, but ultimately gives me a purpose and rewards myself internally to basically give myself a pat on the back. And that's a big thing that I've seen as we do challenging things. We don't actually celebrate the wins along the way, as well as, the finished race. So continue to do that so that you not only are able to change your identity, take action on your habits, build systems that ultimately scale and don't fail. And then as you win along the way, to celebrate that, however that suits best for you, and rejuvenate, as well as when you finish this race, this challenge, this, opportunity or, Misogi piece, and you hit that goal that you've been striving for, to also take a moment and appreciate and reflect on it, simply because as you continue to do more challenging things, if you fail to do that, your body and your nervous system ultimately isn't going to understand why you are doing it. We naturally do hard things so that we are able to gather food. That's our innate ape-like brain. And so if we don't have that reward, then ultimately we aren't connecting the dots between our human mind and animal mind together, and it's going to become even more of a challenge. So make it easy on yourself, on your mind, to create the reality that you want and become the person that you can be through challenging yourself and getting past Quitter's Day or any other failure point that you might have as you take a challenge.